You know those indispensable claims governments love to make. We are doing everything we can for your financial freedom. We will expand. We will bring stability. Sounds great, doesn't it? But when you take a closer look at the past, you can't help but say, wait a second. Because there's one thing that has remained constant throughout history. Those holding power have always used underground financial tricks to leave us without a penny in our pockets, while making their own wealth even bigger. Do you know what the strangest part is? None of these tricks are new. For centuries they've been taking the same stale trick, wrapping it in fancy packaging and putting it right in front of our eyes as if it were something new. The goal is always the same: to transfer money from the bottom to the very top and to keep us constantly thirsty for this system. Let's start with the oldest one: inflation. What does a state do when it spends more than it expected? It either comes out honestly and says, hey people, I'm raising tax rates, which is complete political suicide, or it quietly lowers the value of the money. Now, ancient Rome was the master of this. In the 3rd century, when emperors couldn't handle war expenses, they started stealing the silver from inside the silver denarius coin. The coin, which used to be pure silver, became nothing more than a piece of copper lightly plated with silver. Those in power acted like, we know nothing about this, but the bill was paid by the people holding that money. Prices suddenly skyrocketed and savings turned to trash. So as you can see, long before central banks existed, this silent tax tactic was working like a charm. In the Middle Ages, forced loans came into play. Does the king need money? Without wasting any time, he would call in rich merchants and tradesmen and say, you will lend me money. You didn't even have the option to say, well, I'd rather not. If you didn't give it, they would fine you or seize your property. They claimed they would pay it back, but either years later they would give it back in devalued currency, or they wouldn't pay it at all. While kings lived lives of luxury in their palaces, the people had to scrape for their bread with a needle. In the 17th century, the financial system itself was turned directly into a game. When the Bank of England was founded in 1694, they didn't do it because they cared so much about the people. They needed money for the war with France. The wealthy lent money to the state, and the state said, don't you worry at all, I will pay back your interest with the taxes I collect from the people. Just imagine it, they pulled taxes from the beer people drank, the bread and cheese they bought, and paid the interest of the wealthy. The tax of the poor turned into the guaranteed profit of the rich. Looking at today, you'll realize that not much has changed. The term budget deficit is used, and massive debts are created. Politicians say, we will build hospitals for you, we will build educational institutions, while both you and I know very well where that money goes and to which big corporations it flows. When it's time to pay the bill, nobody makes a sound. They either hit us with taxes or cut our social rights. I want you to picture the 2008 crisis in your mind. Banks took massive risks and brought the system to the brink of collapse. So, who paid the price for it? The giant bailout packages made with the taxes we paid. Who came out profitable from this whole thing? The very same banks that grew even larger after the crisis. In other words, they split the profits among themselves and dumped all the losses onto the heads of the public. Our retirement systems are a bit of a trick, too. For years they said, work, invest in the state, live comfortably when you get old. But that money was never accumulating on the side. Governments spend that money and put pieces of paper in its place. Now that the population is aging, they say the system isn't progressing well. Raise the retirement age limit and erode payouts. In reality, all these things we've talked about are nothing more than perception magic. They were falsely selling us inflation as growth, debt as investment, and crisis packages as stability. they were veiling the truth with magic terms. In the last few years, these tricks have been refined even further. Take what they call quantitative easing as an example. Central banks printed hundreds of billions of dollars at the press of a button. The stock market suddenly surged, and house prices went up to unbelievable figures. The rich, who were already considered wealthy, added more wealth to their capital. But what happened to the ordinary person without any investments in their pocket? They were left alone with the rising cost of living and abandoned to a great struggle. So my friend, the long and short of it is this. This system didn't just happen by accident. It consciously works this way. Inflation is not a coincidence or bad luck. It is a policy of quietly placing the burden of spending right onto your back. Complex laws and rules consisting of hundreds of pages of taxes exist solely so you can't track where and how the money is flowing. So what do we need to do? We need to question every headline that catches our eye. If someone says stimulus, the first question that should come to our mind is, who is getting rich? Not holding our money as paper to let it erode and trying to invest in real assets. And last, but most importantly, do not blindly trust the system just because it says we exist for you. Because systems exist to protect themselves, not you. If you know history, it becomes harder for you to get caught in this system. That is why financial literacy is a defense mechanism rather than a choice.